No one in Bangkok knew his name. Not the fight promoters, not the seasoned trainers who had spent decades shaping Muay Thai champions, and certainly not the woman standing calmly in the center of the ring with a sacred mongkon wrapped around her head. She had remained undefeated through 70 professional fights. Bruce Lee was only 17 years old. He had no titles, no reputation, and no official record to speak of. He was simply a lean Chinese teenager from Hong Kong who had wandered into the most unforgiving fighting arena in Southeast Asia. Everyone believed he had made a terrible mistake. Yet what unfolded over the next 11 minutes would later become one of the most talked about stories in Bangkok's underground fighting scene, a tale passed from trainer to trainer and from fighter to fighter for generations. That is how the events of the night of November 14, 1958, have been remembered. A story Bangkok never forgot. Bangkok, Thailand. Roger Diamond Stadium. November 14, 1958. Bruce Lee had arrived in Bangkok 6 days earlier after leaving Hong Kong aboard a cargo ship that crossed the South China Sea in 4 days. At just 17 years old, he was searching for something beyond everything he already knew. The rooftops of Hong Kong had become too familiar. Street fights no longer challenged him. Even ballroom dancing competitions felt effortless. His teacher, Ip Man, had already taught him everything he could within the walls of the school. Now Bruce needed lessons that no classroom could provide. He wanted to measure himself against the unknown. His father, the well-known Cantonese opera performer Li Hoi Chuen, had given him enough money for a 3-month journey. "Learn something worth bringing home," his father had said. "Otherwise, come back and find a real job." Bruce chose the first path. Before reaching Thailand, he had spent 2 weeks in the Philippines, where he briefly trained with eskrima instructors. In only 9 days, he absorbed the fundamentals of stick fighting, techniques that usually required many months of practice to master. From there, he traveled south to the birthplace of one of Asia's most feared striking arts. He had first heard stories about Muay Thai from sailors in the harbor at Hong Kong. They never spoke about it casually. Their voices always carried respect mixed with unease. "They use elbows, knees, and shins like clubs," one sailor had told him. "They kick banana trees until the trunks give way, then keep training long after that." Bruce listened to every word. He felt no fear, only curiosity. For a 17-year-old, curiosity can be the most dangerous emotion of all. During his first 6 days in Bangkok, he never rushed into a fight. Instead, he observed. He visited 5 different Muay Thai camps, sitting quietly in the corner while studying every movement. He watched how the fighters trained, how they breathed, how they shifted their weight before striking, and how they controlled opponents inside the clinch. He noticed details that almost everyone else ignored, storing each observation with remarkable precision as though his mind were recording everything for future use. On the 4th evening, he attended his first fight card at the stadium. He watched 11 bouts from beginning to end, analyzing every exchange. He saw beauty intertwined with brutality, precision fused with destruction. Muay Thai proved to be everything the sailors had described, and far more. It was a discipline built around controlled violence, refined through generations. He left the arena captivated. 6 days after arriving in Bangkok on the evening of November 14th, he returned. It was a night that would change everything. It was Thursday, around 9:15 in the evening. Even after sunset, the air remained thick with humidity, and the temperature hovered close to 91 degrees Fahrenheit. Roger Diamond Stadium was packed beyond capacity. More than 3,000 spectators filled every seat, staircase, and concrete platform they could find. A haze of cigarette smoke drifted beneath the corrugated metal roof. The scent of tiger balm blended with sweat and sizzling street food. Vendors pushed through the crowd selling grilled insects, bottles of Singha beer, and rice wrapped in banana leaves. Gamblers clustered together, waving stacks of cash while shouting odds in rapid Thai. Somewhere in the background, a small transistor radio played traditional music that almost no one paid attention to. This was the heart of Muay Thai, the country's most respected fighting venue. Built in 1945, the stadium had hosted well over 10,000 bouts. Its concrete walls had absorbed the echoes of countless victories and defeats. The canvas, stained by decades of sweat and blood, glowed beneath rows of fluorescent lights that cast a faint green tint across the ring. Champions were made here, legends were born here, careers ended here. But tonight was different. The audience had gathered for one fighter alone, one name, one woman, Sarah Pongkum, known throughout Thailand as the Scorpion. She stood alone at the center of the ring, performing the Muay Crew, the traditional ritual dance before battle. Every motion was deliberate, graceful, and sacred. Yet beneath that elegance lay unmistakable danger. She was 24 years old, standing 5 feet 6 inches tall and weighing 134 pounds of pure Muay Thai precision. She had been fighting since the age of 9. 15 relentless years had shaped her into one of the deadliest competitors in the sport. Her professional record stood at 47 victories in 47 fights, with 38 wins by knockout. No losses, no draws, no mercy. By then, Sarah's story had already become legendary across Thailand. She had entered a Muay Thai camp in Chiang Mai when she was only 9 years old. Not because she wanted to, but because her father owed money to the camp's owner. His debt was settled by placing his daughter under the trainer's care. At the time, no one considered it unusual. Children trained, children fought, children earned money. The camp fed them, housed them, and forged them into weapons. But Sarah was different from the very beginning. Other children cried during training. She never did. Others dreaded sparring sessions. She looked forward to them. By the time she turned 12, she was already defeating boys 2 years older than herself. At 14, she entered her first professional fight and finished it in only 40 seconds. A crushing right elbow opened such a deep cut that the ringside doctor needed 11 stitches to close it. The crowd could not decide whether they had witnessed something inspiring or horrifying. In the end, they applauded. By the age of 18, no woman in Thailand was willing to face her anymore, so she began fighting men. The first man she faced laughed as soon as he saw her across the ring. His confidence lasted barely a minute and a half. When the fight ended, he was lying flat on the canvas with a broken nose. The next opponent treated her with far more respect. It made no difference. She knocked him out in the second round. By the time she reached her 30th professional fight, men in her own weight class had begun refusing to face her. Not because she was a woman, but because she was Sarah Pongkum. She had accomplished something no female fighter before her had managed. She defeated men. 7 professional fighters had already fallen to her, including ranked contenders who outweighed her by as much as 20 to 44 pounds. Every one of them had been knocked unconscious. Bangkok newspapers called her the deadliest woman in Thailand. Gamblers called her the Scorpion because a single strike was usually enough to end the contest. Her trainers used a different description. To them, she was simply impossible. Her fighting style was terrifying. Muay Thai is known as the art of 8 limbs, using 2 fists, 2 elbows, 2 knees, and 2 shins. Sarah had mastered every one of them. Her right elbow had become legendary, opening deep cuts across the faces of 23 opponents. Her left knee had broken ribs in competition. Her shin kicks carried the force of heavyweight strikes. Yet her greatest weapon wasn't physical at all. It was psychological. Long before the opening exchange, Sarah often defeated her opponents in their own minds. She would stare directly into their eyes during the Muay Crew. If they landed a clean strike, she smiled. If they threw their strongest combinations, she laughed. Little by little, they began to feel smaller, weaker, and increasingly uncertain. By the time she finally decided to finish the fight, most of them had already surrendered internally. Tonight's contest wasn't even scheduled as a championship bout. It was a public challenge. Sarah's promoter, a wealthy Bangkok businessman named Somchai, had announced a prize of 10,000 baht for anyone capable of surviving 3 full rounds against her. In 1958, 10,000 baht represented a fortune. It was enough money for someone to live comfortably for an entire year. The rules were simple. No one needed to beat Sarah. No one had to knock her down. The only objective was to remain standing for 3 rounds, 9 minutes, and hear the final bell. 7 men had already tried that evening. All 7 had failed. The first challenger was a 19-year-old Muay Thai student from a local gym. Nervous but determined, he managed to throw 3 combinations before Sarah drove a knee into his liver. He folded instantly, as though someone had switched off the power inside his body. He left the ring on a stretcher. The second challenger was a former soldier who claimed to have extensive close-quarters combat experience. He lasted 45 seconds. Sarah's left elbow crashed into his temple. He lost consciousness before he even struck the canvas. The third, fourth, and fifth challengers were local fighters with varying levels of experience. None of them survived longer than a minute. The sixth was a karate practitioner from Japan visiting Bangkok. He bowed respectfully, settled into a deep stance, and launched a flawless backfist. Sarah intercepted his arm, pulled him forward, and buried a knee into his body. 32 seconds. The seventh fighter proved to be the toughest of the night. He was a Muay Thai competitor from Chiang Mai with 15 professional bouts behind him. He even landed a clean right cross that snapped Sarah's head backward. The crowd erupted. She simply smiled. Nothing more. Then she walked straight through his next combination as if it were falling rain, drove her knee into his solar plexus, and left him unable to stand for 4 full minutes. Paramedics had to help him from the ring. The audience had become intoxicated by violence and victory. Somchai stepped into the center of the ring, lifting a microphone. Gold rings glittered on his fingers beneath the bright lights. "Anyone else?" he shouted. "Or has Bangkok run out of courage?" The crowd answered with laughter. He raised his voice again. "Perhaps we should look beyond Thailand. Are there any Chinese or Japanese masters brave enough to face the greatest treasure our country has to offer?" The laughter only grew louder. In Thailand, Muay Thai was regarded as the supreme striking art. Kung Fu was dismissed as something made for movies. Karate was considered stiff and predictable. No foreign fighting style had ever earned respect inside this ring. 10,000 baht, Somchai called out once more, enough to buy any foreigner a ticket home, assuming he can still walk afterward. Sarah Ponkum rested casually in her corner, both arms draped across the ropes. She had barely broken a sweat. After 7 fights in a single evening, she looked as though she had only finished warming up. Her eyes drifted lazily across the audience, patient and predatory, waiting for someone reckless enough to answer. "I'll do it." The voice was young, calm, and carried the unmistakable accent of Cantonese beneath carefully spoken English. Someone nearby immediately translated the words into Thai. Heads turned toward the back rows of the stadium. Standing on one of the concrete steps was a skinny Chinese teenager. He wore a plain white undershirt and dark trousers. No gloves, no hand wraps, no sacred headband, no trainers, no team. He looked less like a fighter and more like a kid who had wandered inside to escape the rain. Somchai blinked in disbelief. "How old are you, son?" 17. The stadium erupted with laughter. "A child," someone shouted. Somchai grinned. "And what martial art do you practice, little brother?" "Wing Chun." "Chinese boxing," someone translated. "Wing Chun," Somchai repeated with obvious amusement. "And how many fights have you had?" Bruce shrugged. "I stopped counting the street fights." He paused. "None in a ring." The laughter grew even louder. Now the crowd believed they had been handed real entertainment. A thin Chinese teenager against the deadliest woman in Thailand. The gamblers didn't even bother adjusting the betting odds. There were no odds. To them, this wasn't a fight. It was a joke. Only one man in the audience wasn't laughing. An elderly Chinese businessman sat quietly in the third row. His name was Rupert King. He had come from Hong Kong. He knew the young man standing on those concrete steps. More importantly, he knew Bruce's teacher, Ip Man. He understood what Wing Chun was capable of in the hands of someone who had truly mastered it. Leaning toward his Thai companion, he whispered quietly, "Don't bet against him." His friend stared at him as though he had completely lost his mind. Bruce Lee made his way through the crowd. People stepped aside instinctively. Some laughed as he passed. Others looked at him with sympathy. He climbed through the ropes and entered the ring. Everything immediately felt different. The space seemed larger. The heat became heavier. The bright lights burned against his eyes. The roar of the crowd merged into one continuous wall of sound. He caught the lingering smell of tiger balm mixed with fresh blood from the earlier bouts. For the first time that evening, Sarah Ponkum looked at him carefully. She saw a boy. Thin arms, narrow shoulders, Nothing about him resembled the body of a professional fighter. Without taking her eyes off Bruce, she turned toward Somchai. "This is a waste of time." "Give them a show," he replied quietly. "Make it memorable." "1 round." Sarah gave a small shrug and walked toward Bruce. She stood a little taller than he did. Stopping directly in front of him, she locked eyes with him. "You should go home, boy," she said. "Go back to Hong Kong. Play with your kung fu toys." Bruce didn't answer. He simply looked back at her, not with aggression, not with fear. He was observing, reading, exactly as Ip Man had taught him. Watch the eyes. The eyes reveal everything. For the briefest instant, Sarah experienced something unfamiliar. A flicker of unease. His eyes didn't match the rest of him. His body suggested an inexperienced teenager. A victim. An amateur. But his eyes told a completely different story. She dismissed the feeling almost immediately. He was only a kid. 30 seconds. Then it would all be over. The referee, an aging Muay Thai veteran with battered cauliflower ears and scarred knuckles, called both fighters to the center of the ring. He explained the rules in Thai, while another spectator translated them into English for Bruce. 3 rounds, 3 minutes each, standard Muay Thai rules, elbows, knees, clinch fighting, sweeps. Everything was allowed. Bruce nodded once. He understood exactly what he was accepting. He was stepping into the lion's den and agreeing to fight by the lion's rules. The bell rang. Sarah Ponkum took the first step forward. She didn't rush. She hunted. Experienced Muay Thai fighters were patient predators, and she advanced exactly like one, hands high, chin tucked, every movement measured. A sharp teep shot toward Bruce's chest. It wasn't meant to finish him. It was a test of distance. Bruce slipped sideways instead of retreating. The kick sliced through empty space. She tried again. The result was exactly the same. He simply wasn't where she expected him to be. He moved along unfamiliar angles, circling in ways she had never encountered before. Instead of backing away in straight lines, he drifted diagonally, changing position almost before she realized he had moved. She decided to close the distance. The Muay Thai clinch was her deadliest weapon. Once her hands locked behind an opponent's neck, the fight usually ended moments later beneath a barrage of knees. She had controlled men 40 pounds heavier than herself. This skinny teenager would be effortless. She stepped in, reaching for his neck. Before her fingers could close, his arms were already there. His forearms brushed lightly against her wrists and guided them away. It wasn't a block. It was a redirection. Wing Chun sensitivity, thousands upon thousands of hours training under Ip Man on Tung Choi Street in Hong Kong had built this instinct into him. Endless drills with closed eyes had taught him to read force through touch alone, to recognize direction, pressure, and intention the instant contact was made. The moment Sarah felt his hands, she sensed something unusual. They were alive. They seemed to know where she intended to move before she completed the motion. She reached again. His arms were already waiting. He never met her strength with strength. He simply led it somewhere else. Trying to seize him felt like trying to grab flowing water. Every attempt to establish the clinch dissolved into empty space. Every failed grip left her slightly off balance. Nothing like this had ever happened before. She had dominated men twice his size. Opponents had spent entire training camps preparing to stop her clinch. None of them had succeeded. This boy wasn't merely stopping it, he was making it useless. Sarah stepped backward, reassessing the situation. Fine. If the clinch wouldn't work, then the strikes would. She launched her signature combination, a quick left jab to establish range, a powerful right cross to lift his guard, then the crushing left knee to the body that had ended countless fights. The jab cut through empty air. Bruce had already shifted off the center line. The cross missed his face by barely an inch. The knee came driving upward. Instead of retreating, Bruce stepped toward it. He entered at the precise moment the strike lost its greatest power. At the same instant, his right fist shot forward in a perfectly straight Wing Chun punch. It stopped less than half an inch from Sarah's nose. Complete control. The arena fell silent. Sarah froze. She had felt the wind from the punch. Had he completed the strike, her nose would have shattered. The fight would have ended right there. "What are you doing?" she hissed. Bruce quietly stepped back into his stance. His hands remained raised, his shoulders relaxed, his breathing perfectly steady. Sarah's expression changed. The boredom disappeared. The mockery vanished. Something else replaced it. Not fear. Sarah didn't know fear. Respect, the dangerous kind. Now she attacked with genuine speed. A full-power right roundhouse kick whipped toward Bruce's ribs. Her shin, hardened through years of conditioning against heavy bags, wooden posts, and banana trees, carried enough force to break bones and end careers. Bruce angled his forearm into the strike. It wasn't a rigid block. He absorbed the impact and redirected it, allowing the kick to slide away instead of crashing through him. Pain flashed through his arm, but the force had already been stolen. Before Sarah's foot even returned to the canvas, Bruce answered. A straight right. Not to her face, not to her body, to her shoulder. The strike landed with surgical precision. Her upper body twisted unexpectedly. For the first time in 47 professional fights, Sarah Ponkum lost her balance. She stumbled backward 2 full steps. A collective gasp swept through the stadium. No one had ever seen that happen. Not once. Not in 47 victories. Sarah recovered immediately. Her eyes burned now with wounded pride, frustration, and disbelief. Without hesitation, she unleashed everything. Elbows, knees, punches, kicks, every devastating combination that had overwhelmed dozens of opponents. Bruce moved like smoke. He wasn't trying to defeat a Muay Thai fighter by playing Muay Thai. Whenever she needed distance, he closed it. Whenever she attacked in a straight line, he slipped away at an angle. When she became rigid, he became fluid. When she accelerated, he accelerated with her. He wasn't better, he was different. And sometimes, different is far more dangerous than better. For 90 intense seconds, the fiercest exchange Roger Diamond Stadium had ever witnessed unfolded before the crowd. Sarah finally landed a solid knee against Bruce's thigh. The pain exploded through his leg and would stay with him for days. Bruce answered with 2 quick strikes to her shoulder before driving a firm palm into her chest, forcing her back nearly 3 feet. The bell rang. End of the first round. Bruce returned to his corner. There was no stool waiting for him, no coach, no cutman, no bottle of water. He simply remained standing, breathing evenly while his injured thigh pulsed where Sarah's knee had buried itself deep into the muscle. She was stronger than anyone he had ever faced. Back in Hong Kong, he had fought entire street gangs, but none of those blows had felt like this. Her strikes landed with the force of a baseball bat wrapped in steel. He bent his leg carefully, testing the muscle. Bruised, painful, but still functional. He knew he would remember that knee for a long time. Later, he wanted to understand exactly how she generated so much power from such a short distance, how the rotation of her hips multiplied every strike. There was something valuable here, something Wing Chun did not possess, something worth learning. Across the ring, Sarah moved differently now. The boredom had vanished, so had the confidence that everything would be easy. She was focused, alert, dangerous. Bruce recognized that expression. He had seen it many times in the streets of Hong Kong. It appeared in the exact moment when an opponent realized he had chosen the wrong victim. That was when survival replaced ego. And that was when a fighter became truly dangerous. In the 3rd row, Rupert King leaned farther forward. His fingers tightened around a beer bottle until his knuckles turned white. He had watched Bruce defeat grown men on the rooftops of Kowloon. But this wasn't another street fight. This woman was a professional, a champion, a killer. Bruce was only 17 years old, nearly 8,000 miles from home, no teacher, no teammates, no backup. Across the ring, Sarah sat quietly on her stool. Her trainer, an old Muay Thai master named Kru Richa, had spent more than 30 years producing champions. He leaned close and spoke quickly. He's reading you. He knows what you're going to throw before you throw it. Break your rhythm. Forget combinations. Throw single attacks. Make every strike unpredictable. I know, Sarah answered calmly. She studied Bruce with the same careful attention he had spent days giving the Muay Thai camps around Bangkok. And she noticed something that unsettled her. He was calm. Not pretending to be calm, truly calm. The kind of confidence that only appears when someone completely trusts his own abilities. She had seen that expression before. Every time she looked into a mirror before a fight, Crew Reacher followed her gaze. You can stop if you want. There's no shame in it. He's clearly well trained. Sarah's eyes flashed. A memory surfaced instantly. A 9-year-old girl standing inside a Muay Thai camp in Chiang Mai. A boy twice her size telling her she didn't belong there. The next day, she broke one of his ribs during sparring. She had never quit. She wasn't about to begin now. I'll finish this. The bell sounded for the second round. Sarah changed her strategy immediately. She hadn't become a champion by refusing to adapt. Instead of flowing combinations, she attacked with isolated techniques. A sudden elbow, a sharp knee. Single strikes delivered without warning or rhythm. Her movement changed as well. Less pattern, more chaos, broken timing. The adjustment worked. One of her elbows grazed above Bruce's left eye, splitting the skin open. Blood began running down his face. The stadium erupted. First blood. 3,000 voices shook the building. Sarah smelled it. 24 years of fighting had conditioned her body to respond to blood the way a shark responds to scent in the water. Not with frenzy, with focus. Blood meant her opponent was human. Blood meant he could be beaten. She pressed forward immediately. Another elbow, then a crushing left knee aimed toward his floating ribs. Bruce turned his hips, taking part of the impact on muscle instead of bone. Even so, the strike landed hard. Pain surged through his side. Real pain. Not the kind felt during practice. Not the pain of street fights. Professional pain. The kind that tells the body to stop fighting and start surviving. But Bruce's mind had always been stronger than his body. On the rooftops of Kowloon, when 3 opponents surrounded him, his body urged him to retreat. His mind ordered him forward. During endless hours of Chisao practice under Ip Man, when his arms burned and every muscle begged for rest, his mind demanded one more repetition. Now it did exactly the same. He didn't ignore the pain. He acknowledged it, then set it aside for later. At the same time, he adjusted his own approach. His stance narrowed. His hands stayed closer to the center line. Wing Chun had been built for close-range combat, for moments exactly like this. Ip Man had once told him that Wing Chun was originally created by a woman so that someone smaller could overcome someone larger in confined spaces. It was the art of the underdog. For years, Bruce had understood those words only in theory. Standing in a Muay Thai ring, blood running into his eye while his ribs throbbed with every breath, facing a fighter who had destroyed 47 opponents. He finally understood what his teacher had meant. His movements began to change. Defense and attack became a single continuous action. To the spectators, his hands appeared almost chaotic, but every motion had purpose. Every reaction became an answer. Now it was Bruce asking the questions. Sarah drove a right elbow toward his head. His left hand brushed it off its line, while his right shot toward her eyes in a controlled finger thrust, stopping less than half an inch away. She answered with a knee. Bruce shifted his hips, allowing the impact to glance away, and his elbow rose toward her temple. Again, it stopped just short of contact. Every attack she launched was met with a demonstration of what could have happened. Every halted strike carried the same silent message. I can finish this fight. I'm choosing not to. The crowd slowly began to understand. The young Chinese fighter wasn't trying to overpower her. He was teaching. Halfway through the second round, Sarah reached for her most feared weapon, her right elbow, the strike that had earned her the nickname Scorpion, the same elbow that had split open 23 faces. Bruce didn't evade it. He caught it. His left palm intercepted her elbow in midair, subtly changing its angle. In the same instant, his right hand shot toward her throat, stopping less than half an inch from her windpipe. Their eyes met. For the first time since the fight had begun, Sarah no longer saw a boy. She saw a fighter. For the briefest moment, the roar of the arena seemed to disappear. The stadium was still packed with thousands of screaming people, yet everything between them felt strangely silent. She could hear his breathing, slow, even, relaxed, as though he was standing in a training hall instead of exchanging blows inside a packed stadium. She took a single step backward, not because she was frightened, because she understood. The opponent standing before her saw combat differently from anyone she had ever faced. The round continued. Sarah exploded sideways, firing a short knee. Bruce slipped diagonally, allowing it to skim across his thigh. His response came instantly. One palm nudged her shoulder, disrupting her balance, while his other hand occupied the center line before she could recover. She attacked again, a downward elbow. Bruce slipped beneath it with barely any movement, and his fist rose in a straight line toward her chin. Once more, it stopped less than half an inch away. The crowd roared, but the sound had changed. The laughter was gone. Now there was only tension. The spectators understood they were witnessing far more than a fight. They were watching two entirely different philosophies collide. Sarah increased the pace. A low kick, a transition into the clinch, a sweep. Bruce slipped away as though his weight disappeared at the final moment. He never resisted force, he simply allowed it to travel somewhere else. She launched another right roundhouse toward his body. Bruce accepted it on his forearm at an angle, redirecting the impact before placing a controlled palm against her chest. Not a strike. Distance control. For the first time in years, Sarah felt her rhythm breaking apart. The stadium hummed with anticipation. The gamblers had stopped shouting odds. The vendors had forgotten their food. Even the air seemed frozen beneath the bright lights as drops of sweat flashed through the air like sparks. Sarah suddenly lowered her level and rushed into another clinch. This attempt was faster, more aggressive. Her hands came within inches of locking behind his neck. Almost. Bruce's forearm slipped between hers, lifting her elbows upward while his shoulder lightly pressed against her chest, stealing the foundation beneath her stance. She felt control slipping away. He wasn't stronger. He wasn't fighting for leverage. He was occupying space before she could. Forced to retreat, Sarah exhaled deeply, not from exhaustion, from concentration. The bell rang, end of the second round. The stadium exploded. People leaped to their feet. Some laughed from sheer nervous excitement. Others simply shouted without knowing why. Bruce walked back to his corner. Again there was no stool, no trainer, no water. A thin line of blood ran down his temple. He wiped it away with the back of his hand and continued breathing calmly. Across the ring, Sarah sat on her stool. Crew Richa remained silent for several long seconds before finally speaking. "Do you feel it?" She nodded. "He's not fighting against you. He's fighting inside you." Sarah closed her eyes briefly and listened to her own breathing. Her heart remained steady. Fear still wasn't there. Something else had taken its place. Curiosity. She opened her eyes and looked across the ring. The young man in the white shirt stood perfectly still, as though he was simply waiting for another training session to begin. For the first time that evening, Sarah smiled. Not the smile of a predator, the smile of someone who had finally found an opponent worthy of her full respect. The bell was about to signal the beginning of the third and final round. The bell echoed through the stadium, and the crowd erupted once again, their voices rolling beneath the metal roof like thunder. Yet inside the ring, an almost tangible calm settled over both fighters. Neither rushed forward. Both understood that the final minutes mattered more than everything that had come before. Sarah no longer smiled for the audience. Every movement had become economical, every breath measured. She had abandoned the idea of overwhelming Bruce with power alone. Now she searched patiently for a single opening. Bruce remained light on his feet. His weight seemed perfectly balanced, ready to move in any direction at any instant. His hands floated naturally before him while the centerline stayed carefully protected. Sarah opened with a low kick aimed at his thigh. Bruce lifted his leg just enough to soften the impact before placing his foot back on the canvas without losing his balance. She immediately followed with a short elbow. He stepped half a pace inside its path, gently guiding her forearm away with the palm of his hand. There was no wasted movement, no loud collision, only soft contact, small adjustments, steady breathing. Little by little, the stadium grew quieter. People began realizing they were no longer watching a contest of brute strength. They were witnessing a conversation spoken entirely through movement. Suddenly, Sarah accelerated. A straight knee shot toward Bruce's body. He rotated his hips, allowing part of the force to land against his thigh while his shoulder lightly pressed into her chest, disrupting her balance. She took a step backward, then immediately surged forward again with a powerful right roundhouse kick. This time Bruce didn't retreat. His forearm intercepted the strike at an angle while his opposite palm settled gently against her shoulder. Not a blow, a direction. Her body turned unexpectedly. She felt her center slipping away. Before she could fall, Bruce released her completely. She stared at him. He controlled every exchange, every contact, every outcome. Her breathing deepened, not because she was tired, because she understood. She advanced again, an elbow, a knee, a transition into the clinch. Bruce answered each attack with soft redirections, subtle shifts of position, and straight punches that stopped less than half an inch before reaching their target. Every halted strike felt like the period at the end of a sentence. Every touch carried meaning. At one point they stood so close they could hear each other's breathing. Sarah looked directly into his eyes. There was no triumph there, no hostility, no desire to humiliate her. Only complete attention and respect. She made one final commitment, a fast right elbow flowing directly into a knee strike. Bruce stepped inside the attack. One palm rested lightly on her shoulder, his other hand stopped at her throat. Less than half an inch away, she froze. This time she didn't try to continue. For several long seconds, neither fighter moved. Then Sarah slowly stepped back. The bell rang, ending the third and final round. Yet no one inside the stadium reacted. For a heartbeat, then another. Silence held the arena. Moments later, the entire stadium exploded. Not with the roar that followed violence, with the roar reserved for recognition. Thousands of people stood at once. Some shouted, some whistled, some laughed in disbelief. Others applauded until their hands hurt. Sarah Ponkum raised one hand, asking the audience for quiet. Gradually the noise faded. She turned toward the young man standing opposite her. Then slowly and deliberately, she bowed. Everyone in the stadium understood the meaning of the gesture. It wasn't surrender. It wasn't defeat. It was respect. Bruce answered with the same quiet bow. No celebration, no false humility, only calm acceptance of the moment. The referee looked from one fighter to the other as though trying to understand what he had just witnessed. Officially, the match had ended without a knockout. No one had been defeated. No one had been declared the clear winner. But to everyone watching, the result felt obvious. They had witnessed something greater than victory or defeat. Somchai climbed back into the ring, microphone still in hand. The confident smile that had been on his face all evening had disappeared. He looked at Bruce with genuine surprise before raising Sarah's hand, following tradition. The crowd applauded both fighters with equal enthusiasm. The prize of 10,000 baht remained unclaimed. Yet no one talked about the money anymore. They talked about what they had seen. That night, conversations filled the streets of Bangkok until sunrise. Street vendors, tuk-tuk drivers, professional fighters, gamblers, monks. Everyone repeated the story of the skinny Chinese teenager who had entered the ring as a complete stranger and forced Thailand's greatest champion to rethink everything she believed about combat. Inside small training camps, instructors began telling their students, power is not always the answer. In larger gyms, experienced fighters debated what mattered more: technique or understanding. Older masters simply smiled and shook their heads. Sometimes they said, true art meets true art. When that happens, winning no longer matters. 3 days later, Bruce left Bangkok the same way he had arrived. By sea. There were no trophies packed among his belongings, no championship belt, no newspaper headlines, only memories. The rotation of the hips that generated tremendous power, the incredible conditioning of Muay Thai shins, the destructive efficiency of the clinch, the ability to shatter an opponent's rhythm with perfectly timed unpredictability. He carried home new questions, along with new answers. Sarah returned to her training camp. The following morning, her students noticed something different. She trained more slowly, more thoughtfully. Instead of focusing solely on power, she spent longer exploring contact, balance, and sensitivity. She never explained the reason, yet during sparring, she would occasionally close her eyes for the briefest instant, feeling pressure, direction, and intention before responding. That evening she spoke quietly with Crew Richa. He showed me the space between strikes. The old trainer nodded, as though he understood far more than he chose to say. Over the years, the story of that night spread from one generation to the next. Every retelling changed a few details. Some people exaggerated the events. Others argued about what had truly happened. But the heart of the story never changed. Power could be stopped by understanding. True mastery could be recognized, even in a complete stranger. The young man wearing a simple white shirt continued his journey. Ahead of him waited oceans, cities, battles, discoveries, and a lifelong search for something greater. He still had no idea what his name would someday mean to the rest of the world. But on that hot November night in Bangkok, he had taken another step toward becoming the man he was destined to be. And the woman known as the Scorpion discovered something equally important. Being undefeated was never about avoiding defeat. It was about remaining willing to learn, even in the middle of a fight. For years afterward, beneath the aging metal roof of that old stadium, people claimed they could still feel the echo of the night when two remarkable martial artists met in the ring. And neither of them truly lost.